Hi class, today's lesson is lesson 2-8, division equations. It's the last lesson of the unit. Let's take a look at this purpose. It's to solve whole number division problems algebraically. We've dealt with problems that were addition, subtraction, multiplication, and finally we're dealing with this fourth operation, division. I think you'll find this rather easy to do as well. Vocabulary, there is no new vocabulary, but you'll hear me say vocabulary that we learned just a few lessons ago. Here we have our first couple problems. It says, solve each equation, check your answers. We're taking a look at y over 5 equals 4. Remember that fraction bar indicates division, so this is actually y divided by 5 equals 4. Now, you don't need to write this down. I'm just going to show you using this scale. Again, don't write this down. We have y divided by 5 on one end of the scale. That equal sign is really the fulcrum of this scale, and we have 4 on the other side. So what is it that we need to divide by 5 in order to get 4? Again, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we would do this with respect to how it looks algebraically. All right, so we have y divided by 5 equals 4. If it's easier for you to see, you can always write it this way as well. Rewrite it this way. Now we need to isolate the variable. That's the first step. In order to isolate the variable, y, get y all by itself on this side of the equation, we need to get rid of this divided by 5. How do we do that? Excuse me. We go ahead and do the inverse operation, which is multiply by 5. And if we multiply by 5 on this end, we need to multiply by 5 on the other side of the equation. 5 divided by 5 is just 1. And then 1 times y is just y. So the 5's drop out. 4 times 5 is 20. So we've isolated the variable and we found the solution, y equals 20. Then we go back and look at this, and this is what I want you to go ahead and write down as well. We're going to plug that solution, 20, back into the equation. Does it equal 4? 20 divided by 5? Yes, it does, and it does equal 4. Now, we go back to, oh, I did forget one thing, didn't I? We're getting that scale written down, and this will be probably the last time we'll see the scales. Let's go to 12 equals z divided by 4. This time I'm not going to write it with the division sign. I'm not going to rewrite it with the division sign. I'm simply going to acknowledge that in order to isolate the variable here, z divided by 4, I've got to multiply by 4. So I'm going to multiply by 4 on this side. And in order to keep the equation balanced, I need to multiply by 4 on this side. Well, 4 divided by 4 is simply 1, and 1 times z is z, so the z drops down. 12 times 4 is 48. And now it wants me to go ahead and check my answers, so I'm going to go ahead and slip what I think is the solution, where the variable should be. Does it equal 12? 48 divided by 4, yes indeed, it does equal 12. Next, we've got a story problem here. And let's go ahead and read it. Pressure is the amount of force exerted on an area. Pressure can be measured in pounds per square inch, or psi. The pressure at the surface of the water is half the pressure at 30 feet underwater. So I look at that. The pressure at the surface is half the pressure 30 feet underwater. So pressure decreases as you go into the water, as you go underneath the water. Here they've made an equation. This equation is pressure at surface equals pressure at 30 feet underwater divided by 2. The pressure at the surface is 15 pounds per square inch psi. What's the water pressure at 30 feet underwater? First of all, I've got to draw water. Okay, I'm going to draw water, and I'm going to use this arrow to indicate pressure at the surface. Okay, now the pressure underwater, which is down below here, I'll make a little bowl here, is half that pressure above water. So if I draw a line, and this is about 30 feet underwater, it's half the pressure that it is at the surface. Okay, so I've drawn a little picture to help me understand that it's half the pressure down here, and you feel the full extent of the pressure at the surface of the water. They've given us this equation to help us with the problem solving. Let's go ahead and understand the problem. That's our first step, to understand the problem. Well, understanding the problem means we take a look at what they're asking for. They want, what's the water pressure at 30 feet underwater? So what they want is, eventually, they want the pressure that is underneath the water here. Now, what is the data that they provide for us? Well, pressure at the surface is 15 psi, so I'm going to write that down. Pressure at surface is 15 psi, equals 15 psi. Okay, what other information do they give us? Well, they give us this equation, so I'm going to write that down as well. Pressure at surface equals the pressure at 30 feet underwater over 2. Okay, now next thing, I need to make a plan. What am I going to do? Well, it looks like I'm just going to go ahead and substitute pressure at the surface for 15 psi, since these two, let's call them variables, talk about this particular value. And then it looks like I'm going to have to figure out what the pressure is based upon that substitution. So my third step is to go ahead and solve it. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to put 15 psi on this side of the equation, equivalent to pressure at 30 feet underwater. We'll just call that U, underwater pressure, divided by 2. The question is, well, what is that water pressure underwater? Once again, we're going to go ahead and solve it by isolating the variable U divided by 2. In order to get rid of the divided by 2 and leave Y by itself, we've got to multiply by 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides in order to balance out the equation. 2 divided by 2 ends up being 1. The U drops down. 15 times 2 is 30. So what this is saying is it's 30 psi under the water. So what's happening is there's more pressure underwater. I should say more pressure. Pressure increases here rather than at the surface. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look back and see if that really is the answer. So if we put 30 divided by 2, will it equal 15? 30 divided by 2 is 15, so yeah, we've got a definite answer right there, 30 psi. All right, here are 2 additional problems for you to complete. We have n divided by 10 equals 20, p divided by 8 equals 248. In order to isolate the variable over here, of course, you're going to have to take the inverse operation of divide by 10. And you know what that is. We'll see you in class.